The Nevis Disaster Management Department began its year-long campaign of multi-hazards awareness last month with earthquake awareness. Our next guests are Ngumbah and Zoe Bendeito of the Nevis Disaster Management Department. Good morning and welcome to GMSKN.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
All right, so it's a pleasure to be talking with you about something so very important. First off, can you tell us why you launched this campaign?
That's a very interesting question. The multi-hazard campaign, which the word is gradually getting to multiple hazards campaign. I want to make the adjustment as soon as possible. The multi-hazard campaign mostly goes when they happen simultaneously. For instance, when you have COVID, hurricane, earthquake at the same time. But multiple hazards campaign does not necessarily get them on the same pace. They can come, at different intervals. However, to what you would have asked, St. Kitts, Nevis, and the Caribbean as a whole, we have been zoned as one of the most vulnerable parts in the world in terms of natural hazards. And the challenge about that is how many persons are prepared as to what to do before, during, and after their occurrences. So it didn't take us long to figure out a means of how to enhance a capacity of preparedness and readiness. One of the goals we embarked on was to convert our audiences to become our messengers. That is where participatory approach was highly needed. So in that case, we now look at the calendar from January to December, and we look at key hazards that could impact Nevis other than hurricane alone. We saw earthquake, landslide, volcano, etc., etc. You can name the rest. And that led us to come up with a strategy. It is not so much at in-depth. It focuses on what to do before they happen, during the time of their occurrences, and what to do after. We studied wise for every audience, from kindergartens right through to the ministers of government, to be swallowed by this message. And for that to be done, we made them our voices. That is when we purposefully decided to focus on the various target audience groups and enhance them to become our messengers. You now find the school-based, faith-based, and we are to launch onto business-based, artist-based, and counseling-based. Those are on the way. But for now, we are focused on the school and churches. And how do we go about with the schools? From the calendars, January through to December, if you tell every school to do everything, they will end up doing nothing. So we now have to be specific to ensure in the month of January, and in this case, we started with the primary schools. So fortunately, Nevis has about 10 primary schools. So we spread them all through the calendar. The first Charlestown primary that commenced the year, we gave them earthquake. St. James primary, we gave them landslides. St. Thomas primary, we gave them tsunami, and it continues right through to December. And that school, what they will do is, for example, Charlestown drop cover hold on. We ensure that the students were put on posters. We had them on the radio. We had them on TV, educating the public. So they became our voices. In that case, they own the message. They are no longer a passive listener. So the reason I go at depth in this is not just a program, but it's something that is mindful on converting our listeners or our audiences to become very participatory in the whole process.
It seems like it's an effective strategy indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Zoe, can you tell us about the mission of the campaign?
It's to basically educate everyone about disasters and how it could impact their lives, and to get them involved so that they would know exactly what to do during, before and after. And that they don't really necessarily have to depend on us to tell them. They already know, it's already in their mindset. So that's really what we really want for people to grasp. the concept of it.
Okay.
All right, Jack, you mentioned the calendar, and in listening to you, it made sense, as you rightly said. You can't give the schools everything to do at once because they might not implement anything at all. One of the things that you have here for May specifically is drought in Nevis Academy. So hearing you say that in terms of disaster preparedness, we're looking at what we could do before, during, and after, I'm curious to know how you approach the issue of drought, particularly before the drought.
That's a very, very important question. I like that. And that is something this campaign helps us to understand, that each hazard has its own different dynamics. Because much of times when we focus on hurricane, we want to use that same approach to handle every other hazard. So it won't work like that for drought. Now, when it comes to drought, before drought, the drought will not necessarily follow the approach like hurricane or earthquake. Drought is something that when it comes, it has come. So the focus of drought is heavily on when it is approached. What do you do with water? What persons could do before drought is to reserve water. That's why we encourage systems. Persons should have personal system. So when, let's say, water distribution can't really go through, they would depend on that. And during drought itself, they now tend to use less water. Unfortunately, during the time of drought, that is when we need water most. It's an irony. When the water is short, of course, your plants need to be watered, your vehicle needs to be washed. All of those things start seeking water, telling you we need a lot, whereas that is the time you are to use less water. So knowledge on this will really help persons understand the dynamics of that time and how to go about it. So we begin by teaching children first.
Indeed.
In relation to July, I'm noticing again excessive heat. We live in it seems to be excessively hot, especially at that point in time. Nowadays, it's actually kind of cold, but I don't mind that too much. How do you teach that message to young children in terms of disaster preparedness relative to heat so that they become your messengers effectively?
That is a very good thing, and I'm heavily concerned about that because unfortunately, the world is heading to a point based on climate change knowledge that the heat is like it's just going to be increasing. And the young kids, what always happens with them when it comes to heat, heat is something you don't even need to tell a person. You feel it first in your body, and the dehydration follows. So we actually make them become aware of what they already know, which is that heat that they feel. And now from it, we use other methods to let them know how to avoid dehydration and also how to deal with their clothing, the kind of clothes to wear during that time. And in terms of, avoiding more of the destruction of the ozone layer, we now encourage persons, especially those kids, to now be able to tell their parents, oh, mommy, avoid doing things that can expand on, promoting the wrong gas that will only destroy the ozone layers. So them knowing that, it makes it more effective because when it is hot, it is hot. We all know
hot.
We definitely do.
So Zoe, I have a favorite eat spot here in St. Kitts, Shipwreck, and every time I go there, I notice that we're losing more and more of the shore. How do you? I see Montessori Academy has the coastal erosion. What angles are they going to take to educate the public to let us all understand what is happening?
Well, actually, over by us, there's coastal erosion by, what's the place? Fort Charles.
Yes.
So we will take the kids out there, for example, let them assess the area with us and let them see, like, this is a great issue for us and how it impacts us. And even beachgoers, and we could help them to help us send the message to people to,
Yeah, so more onto that, the key thing from where Zoe is coming from, which we really have to hit on for coastal erosion. Sand mining has been a very big problem. Illegal sand mining, I will put it that way. Illegal sand mining, because we always have to get sand to build, but being mindful of the wrong approach that is being taken, it affects, it affects the shores. And that is one thing we discourage through this campaign, and letting the children know that so they can pass the message to their parents. And another thing too is to encourage the planting of mangrove and other things that will have, help the sedimentary layers to be able to be firm, because at the shorelines, geologists will confirm the fact that we have a lot of sedimentary rocks than igneous rocks. Igneous rocks will not wear out by the sea water, but sedimentary rocks, because of its stratification in nature, is going to erode quickly. So children, their significance in this is that when they know and they take such message to parents who happen to have been the decision makers, I believe it triggers them to, how do you say, pull their socks or stand on their feet to do the right thing.
Definitely so. October, this one stands out for me because we're talking about comprehensive disaster management, all schools. Let's talk about how you intend to implement this particular thing.
That gets me so excited. And October is the month where all the schools now will showcase simultaneously what they are doing for each month. So October is actually the month that you can call a multi-hazard awareness effect, in that all of them are being said at the same time. So it's always colorful. There is one production which I'll send to you, maybe you played one time on the station, where you find all the schools having an item or an expose for their hazards. So for that October, comprehensive disaster management now touches all the angles of disaster management. First of all, the disaster management cycle, which is preparedness, mitigation, other persons usually say mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. That is for the cycle. All those hazards, we go through that. And for the comprehensiveness, we tend to connect it with the bigger framework known as the Sendai framework. That is a different discussion on its own. But one key thing, if we look at the very last component, which talks of the word just left, my early warning system. It really ties on with what we are doing, because much of times early warning system have limited itself to just the instruments, like the alarm, the horn, etc. But now we see the need of utilizing human beings to pass across a message, and awareness is part of early warning system. So the children are fitting in that category. So what we do for the multi-hazard campaign in the month of October, it does not focus on one thing. It focuses on all of what the children are doing. And we have greater events where, at times we have music concerts, quizzes, different things to showcase them as the pilots for the year in terms of safety. And the message always goes out in that month: disaster management is everybody's business.
And October is the month for International Disaster Risk Reduction.
Very good. That's the month for International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. So which month could we use better than that?
Yeah.
Nice. I do not see the culprit here, but I see things that can happen after this culprit happened. Let's talk about the earthquake. We have been getting tremors here and there, some that we can definitely feel, some that are light, and we are only alerted by our phones from the earthquake centers, etc., etc. How can we educate children and adults on how to be prepared for an earthquake, what to do after the earthquake?
You know, earthquake is the hazard I must say I am extremely afraid of. Why I say so is because unlike hurricane that gives you warning, hurricane is so gentlemanly, saying I'm coming at this time, at this category, so know what I'm coming to do, prepare. Earthquake doesn't do that.
No.
Earthquake is the worst thief. You only know it when it has come.
Yeah.
Japan, and I don't know if the United States has joined that, they came up with a system that could predict its occurrence by tracing the first wave in the space of like 3 minutes.
Okay.
So in that 3 minutes, an alarm goes about when everybody tries to balance themselves, but that's just 3 minutes, you know. So because of that nature of earthquake, I will encourage the general public to have a sense of lifestyle mindfulness. Earthquake is not a seasonal thing. It can happen at any time, anywhere. When you're on the toilet seat, it can happen. When you are up the roof trying to pretend to become a carpenter, it can happen. So anytime, wherever you are, be mindful that it can occur.
Yeah.
With that being said, the key question is, what do you do before? The very first thing you have to observe, let's say you get to your room, I'm sure the boxes you would have had since the years of colonial masters, which you don't want to throw them away, you always have them at the top, right? Those are the very first hazard that will fall on you during an earthquake. You know, so be mindful of how your home is set up because you are there most of the time. If an earthquake occurs, I'm in the living room, what is the first hazard that we hit? In fact, it should orientate how you set your home. It should orientate even where you find yourself. Let's say walking in the street. Each time I'm walking, I'm always mindful, looking up, okay, look at these electric wires. In case of an earthquake, how are they going, how will I escape them? So with that in mind, if I'm walking on the street, I am mindful of where I walk. So I say so for us to really be mindful throughout that. That's one thing. And the next thing, always set up an emergency kit in case that occurs. And at home, set up your communication plan. When that happens, your children, do they know your number off by heart? If they ask, what's daddy's number? Can they give it? Or mom's number? That's something you set up. And also do a drill at home all the time. Pretend there is an earthquake. Establish your safe zone if you're at home. Which place will be the safest place for us to evacuate and get onto? So all of that should be said. That is just for home. At work, like in the studio, if an earthquake happens, where are you going? Under a glass table? Be mindful of all of that.
How did you know that?
I can tell. Yes, so that is one thing that could occur. So, and there are other tips, more like, let's see, if you have pets, you also be mindful of their safety during that time. Then when the earthquake itself occurs, what do you do? If at all you have a solid table, you now get under the table where we all have the drop, cover, hold on. The whole of St. Kitts Nevis is aware of that. You go under the table, pin on it, and while you are holding is for you not to lose balance and also for the table not to leave you. So both you and the table tend to be the safe place. Now, if it happens when the table is not there, you go down in the building, I will encourage you to go by the wall, the 90-degree angle of the wall. Science have proven that even if it collapses, that end, the wall will not just drop on you. Yeah. So it's considered safe. Always go towards that edge. And what you do, you now go right down, stoop, and cover your occiput. So in case anything falls, it hits your hands. Because right there, that's a death sentence. Wow. And once you have the shaking, be mindful that there could be an aftershock. So don't immediately run out of the building. Hold on for a while, ensure the shaking has completely stopped. Then you now follow the evacuation route you would have already determined. However, in case what you thought was safe It happened to have now the collapse of a wall. Ensure you have a plan B to use.
Yeah.
Then when you get to your safe zone, that is the time you ensure your phones or radio is set up. I always encourage persons to have that, those radios which are out of style. They will help you during an earthquake because you need to hear an all clear from the responsible channel, either from NEMA or Disaster Management Office, to tell you, okay, it is safe, and will be advised from the seismic office in Trinidad, you will seismic. That is when you are now safe to go back to your building.
I can't tell you how timely this discussion about earthquakes is, particularly as in the news this morning, I was looking at the aftermath of an earthquake in Syria and Turkey, where over 1,000 people were known to have lost their lives. And so when I hear you talk about walking on the streets and looking up, it says to me that your entire mindset of risk reduction is what applies in every situation. And I think that's exactly the message that you were trying to get the public to understand and appreciate. How can we reduce risks at every moment in time to prepare for these things? I want to focus on March, particularly the tsunami, because a few years ago, obviously, well, it's not a few now, probably over 10 years or so, we knew what the devastating effects of tsunamis were, particularly in our lifetime. We saw that, not here, but we definitely saw it. Nevis, you've experienced that. It's in your history books. We know that. How are we teaching the children to prepare for tsunamis, particularly, Jack, as you say, when earthquakes come, they really don't come with a warning. Our tsunami is much better.
Tsunami is a monster. Even though it has a little warning, they don't let the warning not fool you. Yes, that's something which is part of our campaign, and we hold it seriously as well. There is a difference between earthquake and tsunami. However, earthquake above magnitude, let's say from magnitude 7 upwards, some persons have even gone further to say 6.8 upward. Once you have that kind of an earthquake, it can trigger a tsunami. Why I'm saying this is because an earthquake which is not up to that magnitude, which for sure it cannot trigger a tsunami, there you will just go to your safe zone, drop cover, hold on, and head to your safe zone. But those that would have gone above, let's say 7 and above, is a kind of earthquake you can't stand on your feet. If you experience that, the measures of safety or the procedure will now change. Even though you do the drop cover, hold on, you now start running to higher ground. So there is a slight difference between those two scenarios. So since you asked on tsunami, the children, especially on Nevis, they have already, those in the low-lying areas, they have already identified a tsunami route path to their safe zones. And NEMA and NDMD went further to get signs, which they would have put in various places. Those signs will tell you, hey, this is not a safe zone. Another sign is there to direct you on the path of the safe route. And there's another sign that tells you, okay, you have arrived heaven. This is safe. So the children have been oriented on that. And as a matter of fact, every Carib wave exercise in the month of March, all the low-lying schools, including businesses, will do a tsunami drill where they run in an orderly manner to the safe zones. And that is something which I think it plays a very major role. Some persons, business persons, at first were not taking it seriously, but I'm happy they have all started seeing the seriousness of it. My concern on that is to add on contingencies in case the fault lines happen to break a road in a way that is not safe for persons to pass through. What then is a plan B? Whenever we have one way of safety, it becomes dangerous. COVID taught us a lesson. It broke all the one-way protocol. So I now begin to think outside the box in case that does not work. What is the next thing to be done? Yeah, but as for the children, the awareness has really been embedded in them from preschool.
Well, that's definitely important. I'm glad that you're thinking about the contingencies, as you rightly said. That's something that we have to learn to think about, because that one-way approach, if that one way is no longer viable, then what do we do? And I'm really glad that you're thinking about all that. In December, and I know that we're trending on, but in December, I noticed that we have fire. So I'm curious to know, I see the smiles coming from your faces, what we're doing about that.
Zoe?
Since fire can happen anywhere.
Yes, fire normally, December is the winter time, so you expect places to be cold. The truth about fire is that there are a lot of activities that will go on during December. You have carnival, you have, you have that, and Christmas. So much of times when we talk of fire, even though it goes on natural fire, this is the only hazard which I consider the man-made component of it as well, because they have home fires that usually come. I don't know if we are real with statistics. There are usually fire cases in St. Kitts even in the month of December. Yes, where maybe persons will just forget stove, or they got so drunk and things like that occurred. So we thought it wise to highlight that and let the children know what to do about fires. And if at all you want to burn things, let them be in a container, and always notify the fire department if it's even safe to do, you know, garbage burns in your yard. Because at times you will say, it's my property. But if the fire happens to spread all through, it no longer becomes your hazard, it becomes a community hazard.
Indeed.
So yes, those are key things we take into consideration, and we decided to use that month. So is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, we normally collaborate with the fire department, and they would help to conduct drills to help us to know how to subdue a fire in any defense.
Okay. So before we go, let's touch on the one. We have 2 dormant volcanoes in our federation. What are the children taught concerning these volcanoes? Because we said, man, these dormant for so long, they're never going to blow. We're fine. What education is there for both kids and adults alike?
With volcanoes, St. Kitts, even looking at your map, there tend to be a little hope called safe zone. It's just a little dot. Don't fool yourself. It's not really that safe. Nevis as a whole, oh my God, with volcano, we are just in the lake of fire, right? So the way I look at it for let's say the Nevis Peak to erupt, 100% evacuation plan. Wow. Nobody's to be there. So I approach it more on the effectiveness of evacuation.
Okay.
That's it. So how effective would the plan be? Just think of evacuating how many thousand people, how many vessels do we have? The boat, and where are they going to? Now, if we start seeing the other question will be, when is the appropriate time to do the evacuation? This kind of evacuation is that which you have to leave your home, leave everything, and you are not sure if you will come back and meet anything. So it's like you give up your life. That alone tells you the resistance you get from people. You can do that only when the hazard has occurred. Okay. That would be too late. So you have to do it before. What if persons evacuate and what you are predicting does not happen? Will they give a lawsuit against you? And what if they stay and that happens? Would they blame you for not enforcing the evacuation plan, seriously? So to me, a lot of concerns and attention should be on that evacuation plans. Via air, via sea, of course it's an island, we can't say via road. So those two, what are the plans that are there to handle such? We saw what happened in St. Vincent. Their island is not as bad as Nevis because persons could still be on the safe zone. But see the challenges they had in that logistic. That should ring a serious bell on our minds. So volcano is just beyond the hazard itself, but how do we coordinate the evacuation plan? So to me, that is where every department, tourism, everything you can name, should focus on and set up several contingency plans. So when that time comes, we are not trying to figure out what to do in a short time. COVID caught us off guard. So these two should not catch us off guard.
Yeah.